Welcome to the Indycarl Podcast with me, Evan Carl. This is the first ever episode of the Indycarl Podcast. This is my first time not going to the Indy 500 in 12 years, and I figured I would do a little Indy 500 preview show for anybody who's interested and likes constantly watching IndyCar content like I do. So I'm based in Seattle, Washington. It's not an easy trip to make it to Indy every year. My family has always gone since I was a kid. I went to my first in 1999 when Kenny Breck won for AJ Foyt. And ever since, I've just been truly hooked, and I've been a huge fan of the sport and maybe one of not very many IndyCar fans over here in Seattle. Most people, when I tell them I love the Indy 500, tell me they don't like NASCAR. So that's kind of what I get. Typical response. Anyways, figured I'd just do a little Indy 500 show, kind of go over some of the main storylines and give you some drivers to watch, and then give my pick on who I'm expecting to win on Sunday. And boy, I mean, this year has been wild. I mean, this has been an insane number of storylines that everybody's covering, that it's just too many to track. I could talk for 5 hours about the IndyCar storylines and the crazy things happening in this year's 500. But a few of them that I'm going to go through. So number one, rookie on pole, Robert Schwartzman. Awesome story for Prema Racing. They look like they've been completely out to lunch all year this year in the other 5 races that we've had. Crazy to see him go ahead and do that on pole and become the first Israeli-born driver to qualify for the Indy 500. That's just another kind of cool nugget. Alex Palou is trying to win his 5th race in 6 this year. An insane stat. I mean, he's been on an absolutely dominant run, not just this year. I mean, if you look back at the last 2 years, he's won the championship, so he's clearly on another level than everybody else right now. Can he keep that going with the Indy 500? He's never won Indy. He's never won in an oval, but he's been really close in the past. So, I mean, super cool to see what happens. Can Palou keep it going? There's this tiny little scandal going on with Team Penske and some attenuators that might not have been fully legal. I'm not going to dive too much into that. I think that's been covered by a ton of other sources much better than I could at Racer.com or, the Off Track podcast with Hinch and Rossi or Connor Daly's podcast. There's plenty of guys who know a little bit more of the technical details there than I do, who'd be able to cover that better. My favorite part about the whole thing, though, is the fact that we're going to get to watch 2018 Indy 500 champion Will Power starting in 33rd and defending and back-to-back winner Joseph Newgarden coming from 32nd, both with rocket ship Penske's that we know are going to be super fast. Nobody's ever won it from the back row. No one's ever won it from, I believe, like 28th back. So it's going to be wild to see what they're going to be able to do on race day. Are they going to be able to carve through the field, especially with like some not great pit positioning that they now have that makes things a little bit more disadvantageous? Going to be insane. So that's such a cool storyline to follow. Maybe my favorite one. But there's a couple of ones that I think that haven't really been talked about a whole lot. I think because of how much has been focused on the Penske scandal, understandably so. But for me, this is going to be super interesting to see the first ever hybrid Indy 500. We've talked quite a bit about the hybrid and how it affects the qualifying, and it was really interesting to watch that in qualifying weekend to happen. But this is the first time that we're going to get to see it truly in the race. I'm interested to see, does that change how things are going to go in the last couple laps? Like in the past couple years, we've had some crazy last lap passes and runs at the very end. Would the hybrid have allowed Pato O'Ward to beat Joseph Newgarden last year instead of Joseph going around him in turn 3 on the last lap? Would that have changed Marcus Ericsson from getting passed in 2023 by Joseph Newgarden? This is going to be really interesting to see how the drivers use and deploy the hybrid at the opportune time and regen it at the right time throughout the race, but in particular at the very end to see how that all factors out. Kyle Larson. So awesome any year that we have somebody trying to attempt the double, which is the Indy 500 and the NASCAR race in Charlotte on the same day, 1,100 miles. Only one driver has ever completed all 1,100 miles, and that would be Tony Stewart back in 2001. So we didn't get, we were robbed of being able to see Kyle do that last year because of the rain delay at the Indy 500. It was super cool to see him be in the Indy 500. But it's just an awesome thing that he's trying to attempt, and he's such a badass dude for going and trying to do this, and he'll drive anything, and I think it's super cool, and I'm hoping that he does really well. I think a lot of Indy guys maybe don't want him to win, come over and beat the IndyCar guys at their own game at the 500, but man, let's see what he can do. I think it's such a cool storyline. So those are all really interesting, and I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight is Fox Sports and how much they're making this feel like such a big deal. Like they've been putting out so much content. I've seen today here on Carb Day, they've been having a bunch of their shows like First Things First with Nick Wright and a couple other guys. A pretty big popular show. They're broadcasting it from the Speedway. They're interviewing drivers like Elio Castroneves, Takuma Sato, Kyle Kirkwood. They're talking with the announcers. Like, it just feels like a big deal. They're truly trying to make it this Super Bowl moment for this event, which it should absolutely be. I've been to a ton of different events in my life and sporting events, and I'm a huge sports fan. I've been to the Rose Bowl. I've seen so many different huge things, but nothing compares, especially to being there at the Indy 500. And it deserves this lead up, and I think you got to give Fox a ton of credit. And I can't wait to see what they do content wise leading up to Sunday and on Sunday. Like all the celebrities that are going to be there. Like, there's no reason why this shouldn't be one of the biggest events in America every year. It already is obviously the biggest single day sporting event in the world, but it should feel like that externally. And I can tell you, as somebody coming from Seattle, it's not as big a deal on the West Coast in general. But man, it should. This should be something that everybody has marked in their calendar. So I'm excited to see what Fox does with it to bring it to that. And tons of credit to them for what they've been able to do thus far with all the commercials, Super Bowl commercials, and just getting people excited and getting to know the drivers and everything. So super cool. Leading me into my next segment, which is the top 5 drivers that I would want to watch in this year's race and I think are going to be worthy of watching in this one. So I think first and foremost, the guy that I'm looking at as, to see if he can continue his rapid ways is Alex Palou. Palou has won, as I had mentioned, 4 of the first 5 races of the year. He has never won on an oval, but he is so dominant. He is so precise, and it's going to be super interesting to see if he can keep that car up front, which a lot of people have been saying. He's got a great car. A lot of people thought that he was going to be on the front row or maybe compete for the pole, which he has won before. But does he have that killer instinct in the last 3-4 laps to be able to win it? He's been really competitive in the past. He was outdueled by Elio Castroneves in 2021. Got taken out when probably having the best car in 2022 on pit road. He got taken out and still came out and finished 4th after that. He is ultimate IndyCar driver, and I think that there's a lot of people making a big deal about him never winning on an oval, but it's coming, and it's just a matter of time. Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be this race? So super interested to see what happens with Palou. Joseph Newgarden is number 2 on that list, obviously, because he's going for the three-peat here. No one's ever done it. Elio was the last with an opportunity back in 2001. Didn't get it done, finished 2nd. Joseph could make history not just with that, winning the 3 in a row, which would be awesome, but also winning from the back row, which nobody's ever done. So as I had mentioned before, I just can't wait to see those Penske's and what they're able to do and the show that they're going to create for us fans by flying from that back row and going through, guys as quickly as they can. I mean, that's going to be a tall task, but I've heard some other people say that and some other drivers say that they expected him to be in the top 7 or 8 by lap 85. So if that's the case, he's going to be right there at the end. He's going to be right there. Third guy that I'll highlight is, synonymous with the last couple of years at the Indy 500, and that's Pato O'Ward. He debatably should have won it, at least once of the last 3 years. He's had a car to win it. He did everything right last year, passing Joseph Newgarden going into turn 1 on the final lap, only to be passed by him again with a crazy move by Joseph last year into turn 3 on that same lap. Joseph had the faster car, and it was just not Pato's year, but man, it would be cool to see the McLarens, get out there. We'll have the first McLaren win since Johnny Rutherford back in the 70s. And Pato is the most popular driver in the sport. What he would be able to do for this, I think, would be huge. A lot of people rooting for him. And obviously, me wearing a little McLaren shirt, I might be one of those guys. Another guy that I'm going to highlight, Takuma Sato. So Takuma's a 2-time Indy 500 winner, won it in 2020 with this same team, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Though they've really kind of fallen off, especially from the Speedway pace since then. Graham got 3rd in 2020 when Takuma won it for this team. Graham is way in the back now and doesn't seem anywhere near close to being able to truly compete for the win. Could be wrong, but it sure doesn't seem that way. Does Takuma, who is, we know such a badass at the Speedway, does he have what it takes to win this race? We know that he's going to have the bravery to be able to throw it into turn 1 like he has so many times and try to get some crazy crazy moves to win it. But is the car there? I think that's the question for me is does the Rahal car have enough? And watching Carb Day today, he had some kind of an engine issue or a hybrid issue, and he had to get towed in near the end of the practice session today. So I don't know what that necessarily means, but that's also a factor. I just don't know if they're going to be able to quite compete with the cars that we're going to see from Penske, from Ganassi, and maybe even from the McLarens. So he's another guy to watch, though, because he's on the front row, and he deserves credit for that, but we'll have to see if he's able to get there at the end. Then the fifth guy, I think, has been really underrated so far this year, or at least has been flying under the radar, and that's Scott Dixon, which is crazy. A guy who is as successful as Scott Dixon flying under the radar, but he's kind of been a bit overshadowed by Alex Palou, especially this year with how successful Palou has been for Chip Ganassi Racing. Scott is probably should be a 3 or 4 time Indy 500 winner at this point. He is so good around the speedway. He is the all-time laps-led leader at the Indy 500, but he's only won it the one time in 2008. So what is he able to do? Is he finally going to get the good luck that he needs to win? He's had so many close calls from speeding on pit road to being passed at the very end of 2020 by Takuma Sato, and then the yellow comes out. He's had terrible luck here for a long time. Is it finally going to be his year? I mean, I think especially with him flying under the radar, he's one that I would not be shocked at all wins his second on Sunday. So a couple of dark horses that I want to highlight as well. Maybe not the guys that I would necessarily pick, but people that I think have very competitive cars and could fly their way to the front. Connor Daly, he's starting 11th. He is as confident as I've ever seen him. I'm a fan of Connor's, and I like listening to the Speed Street podcast on YouTube, and I think he does some great stuff. But he's really good around this place. He's really fast, and he seems as confident as he's ever been in that AM/PM car for Juncos. But again, that's a small team. Are they going to have what they need in pit lane? Are they going to have what they need with the car at the end of the race to be able to truly compete for the win? I don't know, but he's definitely confident, and I would not be shocked at all. I mean, he's been in the top 10 here multiple times. He's led, I think, the last 3 Indy 500s. So I would expect for him to be in a factor at least at some point in the race. A couple other guys, Kyle Kirkwood. So I was listening to him talking on First Things First earlier today. He's a confident guy too. I think a lot of people were pointing to him as one of the cars to watch. For whatever reason, the Andretti cars just really didn't have the speed in qualifying. He's going to be starting, I believe, back in 23rd. But he's super fast, and he's the only driver not named Alex Palou that has won a race this year. Again, very different thing in Long Beach and a street course and circuit. But Kyle Kirkwood has always been fast at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I think the Andretti's have some race pace, at least it seems to be. From what I've watched in some of the practices, he's able to kind of get around some guys and seems really quick. But I don't know. I don't know if that's gone away since qualifying or what happened there. But he's certainly one that I'm watching and I think has always been good and is a super talented driver. And then the last guy that I'll mention as a dark horse, and I can't believe he's even in that conversation, and that would be Helio Castroneves, going for the 5th win and the record 5th win of the Indy 500. He is without a doubt one of the best of all time, especially on ovals in IndyCar, and he's starting pretty far in the back, but it seems like he's always going to factor in, and I think if he's got a good car underneath him, he's going to find a way to take it to the front. And I don't think anybody would complain to see Helio climbing the fence for the 5th time at 50 years old. Hopefully he can still climb relatively high in that age. He's getting up there. But yeah, so those are some guys I wanted to highlight too. My pick for the race has to be Alex Palou. I think with what he's been able to do this year, how good that they've been, how on it the pit crew's been, how on it that entire Chip Ganassi team has been, it's hard to imagine that he is not going to be right there at the front at some point. And I think, he's probably going to be as brave as anybody on those last few laps, because the reality is, if you think in terms of the IndyCar championship this year, he could probably crash the next 3 or 4 races and still win the championship easily. He has nothing to lose, and I think he knows that if you want to be really considered one of the GOATs of IndyCar, you have to win the 500, and he's fully aware of that, and I think that, as precise as he is, he's going to find a way to get it done, but we'll see what happens. I'm pulling for my boy Pato O'Ward for McLaren. I'm pulling for Connor. I'm pulling for Kyle Kirkwood for Rossi. There's so many guys to pull for, but I think Palou gets it done on Sunday. So let me know what you think. Those are just my top picks here and my storylines for the Indy 500 this year. I'm super excited. I'm super bummed that I'm not going to be there. It's such an amazing event. And yeah, just let me know in the comments if you have any picks of your own and if you like what we're doing here. But yeah, probably talk to y'all Sunday night after the race. We'll do a little post-race. Cheers. See ya.